Yes, I'm here speaking with Mike Kelso. Mike Kelso is an author I met at the Festival of Books in the Alleghenies. This is his Goodreads profile. Yes, he has his own webpage, and yes, he's a former correction officer. Um, so yes, this is an examples of some of his work. Yes, he writes in the horror genre. Um, So yes, he has his own. Here, this is a page from his own website. So okay, yes, we had made a mistake, but now we corrected it. Ha ha ha. And and yes, so can you tell? So Mike, you can tell us about your experiences as a corrections officer and working as a how it may have influenced your writing.
Yeah, I started out, I worked as a corrections officer for 20 years, and I used to do a lot of reading, especially on night shift. I'd rather read than be trying to stay awake between rounds and stuff. Um, and we had a warden that came in and he said, "I don't want you reading on post anymore." So I said to myself, well, if I can't read stories, then I'll write my own stories. So I started writing short stories. And of course, with the environment that I was in, they gravitated towards being horror stories. And I started, after I'd written a few, I started showing them to coworkers who most of them would look at it, they read it, they'd say, "Oh my gosh, this is horrible. When are you writing your next one?" So it was it was interesting to get that encouragement. So I kept writing. And one of the things that really encouraged me is I got on a website called fanstory.com. And that's where I met a few of my writing mentors. Being on that site really helped me to grow a lot as a writer. And my mentors really helped me to like hone my writing, to be able to accept criticism and say, you know what, it's what's best for the story, not your ego. They helped me a lot. And one of my mentors, he actually challenged me. He said, "You know what? I'd like to see you write your stories in no more than 500 words." And I took that to heart, and I really tried hard, and it was difficult. If anyone's tried to do anything like that, you realize it's difficult.
I guess the
The
re
one,
the readers can sort of insert their own imagination into the story,
yeah,
the more brief it is.
yep. Well, and also it's a matter of getting rid of the excess junk that's not really needed. One of the stories I wrote was 1,200 words long, and I managed to pare it down to 500. And you find when you go through over and over and over again, you find there's a lot of things that don't need to be there. And it helped me to tighten up my writing, to focus on just the story. And then another one of my writing mentors came along and said, "You know what? These are pretty good. You should put this together in a bundle and publish it on Amazon." So that's when I first started learning about how to self-publish. Uh, because I did. I took 20 of those stories, put them together, and that became my first Fragments of Fear book, the first book I published. Um, and, there was a lot of trial and error there of figuring out what to do. I made my own cover and just there was a lot of things to learn. And it started from there with learning the process of how to publish my own things. And a lot of those lessons really helped me with later on doing my own self-publishing. Um, the only book that I did that wasn't self-published was my first novel, One on One, and it was based in a prison. I had originally written it as a 3,000 word short story. And then when I got done, I reread it and said, you know what? There's a lot more story here. So I started expanding it, doing more scenes, more characters, until I had come to novel length, which is around 50,000 words. And I was on LinkedIn at one point, and I was talking with this other person, and this guy comes in and says, "Hey, I'm a publisher. I'm looking for books." He was talking to the other guy, and I said, "Well, I've got a book that I've just finished, and would you like to look at it?" And he said, "Okay, send me the first three chapters." So I did. He said, "All right, I like it. Send me the rest." And he came back, said, "I like it. Let's publish it." So that was the only one that I've had published by a publisher. And I really liked that experience. I learned a lot through the experience. But in the end, if I had the choice, I would still stick with self-publishing, because as great as this guy was, he helped me out tremendously. With self-publishing, you have control over everything. Where when you publish with someone else, they have, they control the marketing, they control the price. There are things that they control that you can change, but you have to email and say, "Hey, can you change this?"
Yeah, I guess
Whenever I have,
self-publish. Yeah, self-publishing, you get to keep more of the sales as well.
yeah, when I would have a reader that would contact me and say, "Hey, I found a couple typos in your book." On any of my self-published book, I would immediately go in, I would fix the manuscript, and I would upload a new manuscript with the changes.
Yeah.
Whereas with someone else, I would say, "Hey, someone found these changes, can we do this?" And it would either be, "Well, I'll see what I can do," or, "You know what, it's
Mhm.
not that huge that we
Yeah.
really need to." So
Hmm.
I try to always be improving my books. So if I do find an error, I find something that I can fix, I'll go in and fix it.
Okay. All right. Yes. Well, I've gone through some of that with my books as well. And and like I could say that, like, so you said you had, like, before you said you created like fictional settings, but the terrain is very similar to what you would see in the Alleghenies, would you
Yes.
say, in your
Yeah.
books, in your stories?
Yeah. I have like an imaginary like county that I've created, and there's three towns in it. One's small, one's medium, one's large. But a lot of the terrain I take from the general area that I live in, Bedford County, Blair County, and whatnot. And I'll take it and I'll use it almost like a character. Like if I'm writing a scene, and like say I'm writing in my zombie book, and I need a scene where somebody's coming out of an alley or something like that. I can drive into town and I can just look around and say, "Oh, I like that alley right there," and I'll kind of take a picture of it and kind of visualize it, and then I'll come back to the book and I can be much more descriptive about that scene, because I can give the background, was there rusty metal hinges on the door and stuff like that, and then bring the characters into that scene. So it kind of enhances the story to have more of that description for people to connect with. And I do that with a lot of my stories. I'll try to ground them in an area where I'm familiar with. Um, like a lot of I have three short story collections that are about cryptids, and I have a novel that's about cryptids. And a lot of those are written they take place in forests. And I live halfway up a mountain, so there's trees all around me. So I can get a lot of inspiration from that, and then I just put the creatures in there and go from there.
Okay. So yes, and you said you live and work in Bedford County,
Mhm.
and you know I I was speaking with you before about, like the incline plane here in Johnstown
Mhm.
would make a good setting for a supernatural thriller. There's like an Indian burial mound right behind behind the inclined plane, that might make a good setting for a supernatural thriller. And you were saying your prison is also on top of an Indian burial ground.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize that it's supposed to be built on top of an Indian burial ground. So there have been some stories that I've heard about during my 20 years of working there of like things that go on that really shouldn't be, but I never really wrote those stories down.
Okay. And of course, I've heard stories of people claiming that there's a monster swimming in Raystown Lake. You said
Yeah.
Raystown Ray.
Hmm. Yeah,
So,
I heard the story about that they the deepest part of Raystown, they actually sent divers out there to try to find the bottom, and the divers couldn't. The water was so murky, and like they couldn't go down far enough to find the bottom.
probably because of the pressure.
Hmm. So, I mean, that would make something like a Raystown Ray more plausible
Yeah.
because if it's deep enough that he can hide, it could hide, and nobody
Yeah.
can find it, then
Mhm.
that's
Yeah, but
possible.
Raystown Lake's not that old. It's not even 100 years old.
Mm,
I mean, how would a big sea creature get in there?
I don't know.
You could say the Loch Ness monster, that's millions of years old. I mean, the Loch Ness was carved out by glaciers and is connected to the sea, so that gives it a little more plausibility. Even some like giant fish or some dolphin could swim in there and get mistaken for the creature.
You know, I've
So,
heard Diplodosaurus the most, that's what it looks like.
okay. Oops. Okay. Yes, I guess we are sort of running out of time right now. Well, we got about 10 minutes left. Um, so so I guess that pretty much covered everything I had for you. Is there anything else you would like to add?
Uh, just to like, if there's any aspiring authors, people who just write for fun that are listening or watching,
Mhm.
if you're having problems with saying, "Oh, I don't know if I should keep doing it," I want to say definitely you should keep doing it. Writing it's fun and you can learn the craft, you can learn to do better. Um, Everybody writes crap. I write
Mhm.
crap on my first draft. That's just what you have to do to get in the mode of
Yeah,
writing.
I
And
go
you
through
can
it too.
always, yeah, yeah, you can always go back and fix it later. One of my favorite sayings about writing is your first draft is like you're filling a sandbox with sand. You'll come back and make the sand castles later.
Okay. Yes, I mean I do more nonfiction writing, but
Mhm.
obviously that makes, I mean still the process in many ways is the same. You still have to know your sources and watch your P's and Q's. But okay, and I know that I guess so you said I guess the Writers Conference of Northern Appalachia that's coming up in March at St.
Mhm.
Francis. Um, I do know a few other people who paranormal investigators I could always hook you up with. So,
Well, I have several with on Instagram. The
oh, you
last
do?
conference I went to was the PA Myths and Legends, which was a
Oh,
lot about Bigfoot and stuff. So I have
okay.
several that are following me on Instagram, and I'm following them.
Okay. All right. Well, sounds good. And well, thank you for your time and look forward to seeing you maybe at next year's festival.
All righty, thank you.